Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Basketball Weekly Planner. I'm Amber Wilson, and joining me, of course, the senior fantasy writer Jamey Eisenberg. And Jamey, first things first, coming to an NBA court near you. A couple guys coming back. You have Gilbert Arenas and Elton Brand. Arenas, of course, has been out since November. Brand has been out the entire season. Both of these guys are practicing. Let's start with Arenas first. When do you expect him to make his return?
Well, Amber, he's talking about March 25th as his potential return, following a Wizards road trip. And, I think he's getting back into practice right now, so that's a very good sign. He's also talking about his contract situation because he plans to opt out following the season. And an interesting quote that he said, on one leg, I can still get you 22. So the fact that he's talking about, potentially playing on one leg, not necessarily a good thing, but that he's, still encouraged by what he's able to produce. So I think what you'll see with Arenas is a situation where he'll be able to get back on the court and maybe be able to help you before your fantasy playoffs, so you'll know what you'll have with him once the fantasy playoffs start, and if you could get him on the court to use him, in maybe a championship game or even, round 2 or round 3.
What about Elton Brand? What do you expect out of him?
Sure, Elton Brand is also practicing. It's a situation with him where he really hasn't, tested out his Achilles at all. He's gone through a couple of drills, maybe 1 or 2 team practices at this point. And so the thing with Elton Brand is it's going to take him probably just a little bit longer than Arenas to get back into the flow of things because he really has just been riding the bike and shooting a little bit. So I think you'll see Brand a little bit slower. When he comes back, it's also a situation where he's only going to give you about 17 games. So, again, those 17 games could be in your fantasy playoffs, could be fantasy championship week. So you're going to want to sort of see how he does, test him out a little bit. Hopefully, he gives you a couple games before you have to set your lineup, and then see if you could put Brand in there. Because when Brand comes back, he's going to really affect a couple of guys, as we'll get to with our start and sit 'em.
Right. Speaking of, let's jump right into your starting forwards. And on this list, you have Corey Maggette. Here's a guy that is going to be very affected by Brand's return.
Absolutely. Corey Maggette's been great this year. He's averaging 22 points. 5.9 rebounds. You definitely want to start him this week because they have a great schedule facing Miami, Orlando, Atlanta, Washington. Some great matchups for Maggette. Another guy also, Al Thornton, who's been playing very well without Brand. Chris Kaman as well. But Maggette, I think, is the really one to watch because he's had to carry the scoring load for the Clippers. Now Sam Cassell is gone. So the Clippers are going to go through a little bit of a change. Hopefully the guys who have been helping you fantasy-wise don't necessarily change too much. But Brand's going to really affect what these guys are able to do.
All right, jumping into your sitting forward this week, you have 3 guys on this list. David West, the Hornets have basically the most brutal schedule imaginable this week.
Yeah, they really do. David West is a guy dealing with an ankle injury. He actually missed the game Wednesday night. So keep an eye on what happens with his injury situation. But I think all the Hornets you're really going to want to stay away from. Peja Stojakovic, Tyson Chandler. Those 3 guys really the main ones. You're not going to sit Chris Paul because he's that good. But the Hornets are facing the Lakers, they're facing Detroit, and they're facing San Antonio. 3 of the better defensive teams in the league, especially when you're talking about Detroit and San Antonio. I think you'll still see the Hornets put up some good stats, but not necessarily what we're used to seeing. So sort of lower your expectations. And when it comes to David West, because of his ankle situation, probably want to sit him a little bit.
All right, moving on to your starting centers this week. You have Al Horford, Pau Gasol, and Brad Miller. Al Horford on fire in his rookie season.
He is, Amber. When you look at Al Horford, very quietly putting together a rookie season that I think is going to earn him Rookie of the Year honors because unlike Kevin Durant, Al Horford has his team in playoff contention. Atlanta right now is on the outside of the playoff race looking in, but Horford's been a main part of that playoff push for the Hawks, which is why they went out and got Mike Bibby. But when you look at Horford, averaging almost a double-double, 9.6 points, 10.0 rebounds, was the Eastern Conference Rookie of the Year for February, so had a very good month there. A lot of double-doubles, just a very consistent player, and I think he gets the nod again over Kevin Durant for Rookie of the Year. At least, not necessarily fantasy-wise, because as we know, Durant puts up a lot of points, but Horford, from an NBA standpoint, I think has earned the honor just because he's that good, and of course, he went to a very good school.
Which is clearly why he's so good. Moving on to your centers this week. If Al Horford's on fire, then Al Harrington, cool as a cucumber.
Absolutely. That's a strange situation because with Chris Webber now dealing with an injury and Andres Biedras, who's missed some time now with an appendectomy, you would have thought that Al Harrington would have really taken off because he would have gotten the center nod and really been able to get some extra shots. But the exact opposite's happened. I believe he has 32 points in his last 3 games, really just not getting the opportunity. He's been coming off the bench, sometimes starting. They've been using rookie Brandon Wright to start a little bit. Matt Barnes has started for the Warriors and Don Nelson's crazy offensive scheme. So I'm really surprised that Harrington hasn't taken advantage of this opportunity. And the reason that we have him as a sit, because if he's not playing this well, you just can't count on him. So you either want to have him as a forward or as a center. I think you keep him on the bench just because very inconsistent right now.
Okay, moving on to your starting guards this week. Brandon Roy, Rudy Gay, and Josh Howard. Josh Howard picking his game back up after a back injury.
Yeah, he was slowed by that back injury, for a couple games, and he's really taken some time to get back into the flow of things. On top of that, they bring in Jason Kidd in the trade from New Jersey, and so the whole offensive scheme for Dallas has changed. Dirk Nowitzki's game has really taken off with the addition of Kidd. Howard sort of struggled a little bit, but he had a 25-point game against Utah coming into his game Thursday night against Houston, and I think you'll see Josh Howard really start to pick things up. Dirk Nowitzki's going to be suspended for the the game against the Rockets. So we'll really see what Howard could do playing really in that tandem situation with Kidd, and I think Howard could really take off. A very good schedule for the Mavericks this week as well.
Okay, your sit guards this week, Peja Stojakovic, Ben Gordon, and Andre Miller, who also has a brutal schedule this week as well.
Yeah, the Sixers, they have Boston, Detroit, and San Antonio. So when you're talking about as a team, I don't think you're going to sit Andre Iguodala, but you might want to sit Miller. You're definitely going to sit Thaddeus Young, another very good rookie, and you're going to sit Samuel Dalembert, the center for the Sixers. So Andre Miller is having a career year. His points are career high right now. He's still getting it done. Assists, rebounds. His first full year in Philadelphia after coming in the trade from Denver a year ago. I like what Andre Miller has done, but this is just not the week you want to use him, just because, again, brutal schedule when he's got to face guys like Chauncey Billups, Tony Parker. Just a tough situation for him this week.
Okay, in closing, let's talk injury updates. Chris Bosh, it's my favorite subject, right? Chris Bosh, when is he expected to come back?
He's supposed to come back the start of this scoring period, so I think you want to keep an eye on what happens this weekend, see how he does, if he's able to go through some practices, still have some swelling in his knee. So I think you just got to keep an eye on it before you set your lineup. Always we're going to tell you to err on the side of caution, keep him reserved in case he's not 100%. The Raptors are looking at a playoff push, so you don't necessarily want to take a chance in a guy that they're going to try and save, to make sure they're healthy for the playoffs. So the safe bet to keep him reserved unless he does get back on the court this weekend. Some other guys missing some time with injury. Both Kings stars, Kevin Martin and Ron Artest, missed their games Wednesday night. Martin dealing with a thumb injury, Artest dealing with a foot, so keep an eye on what happens with them. The suspension that Dirk Nowitzki got was for a tackle on Andrei Kirilenko, which did not look like it felt very good. So Kirilenko is dealing with a hip injury. Keep an eye on what happens with him. Zach Randolph still missing time with his foot injury. Keep an eye on that. Gerald Wallace, a guy for the Hornets who's played the Bobcats who's played very well this year. Expected to be back March 12th, so hopefully he gets back on the court. We're still waiting on Caron Butler. When you're talking about Gilbert Arenas, Caron Butler, a big star for the Wizards. Hopefully he gets back soon. And then Zydrunas Ilgauskas, I know one of your favorite names to pronounce. Big Z still dealing with his back injury, so Anderson Varejao, his fantasy value will rise. Big Z, you want to see what happens right now, keep him reserved.
Okay, thanks for all of your advice, Jamie. That'll do it for us for now. Keep your mouse right here at CBSSports.com for everything you need to know in the world of sports. And if you missed anything here today, stop, refresh, and rewatch. For Jamey Eisenberg, I'm Amber Wilson. Good luck with your lineups, guys.